Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a dimension of personal finance that goes way, way beyond your typical spreadsheets and bank balances. We're talking about giving back. We're going to strip away all that external pressure and just look at the actual mechanics of what happens, both to the world around us and to ourselves when we actively choose to be financially generous.
Okay, let's dive into this. I want to pose a deeply personal question directly to you. What is the most meaningful use of your money? And notice I didn't say the most practical, right? I said the most meaningful. Because, let's be honest, we spend so much of our energy figuring out how to earn money, but we rarely hit pause to actually think about its ultimate potential in our lives.
To really grasp the power of generosity, it helps to start with this incredibly simple, foundational truth. Money is just a tool. That's literally all it is. Kind of like a hammer or a wrench sitting in a toolbox, it possesses absolutely no inherent moral value on its own. Its ultimate worth, well, that comes entirely from what you actually choose to build with it.
Now, we all know the standard uses for this tool, right? Paying rent, building up that emergency fund, investing for retirement, and those are absolutely crucial. You have to build your own financial foundation first. But then we have what many people discover to be the most meaningful use of all, giving some of it away. Which, when you think about it, feels completely counterintuitive. I mean, you work incredibly hard to acquire this tool, only to just hand it over? So why on earth do we do it?
Well, we can actually think of the impact of financial generosity as a series of expanding ripples. And the very first ripple is what we call the internal ripple. We're starting right here with the self, directly addressing that quiet, maybe slightly subconscious question we all have when we think about charity. How does giving actually benefit the giver?
Economists and psychologists have been studying this for decades, and honestly, the consensus is pretty wild. It turns out, giving money away actually increases your personal happiness way more than spending that exact same amount on yourself. No joke. Dropping cash on a cause you truly believe in yields a vastly better return on investment for your mood than, say, buying another random gadget you're probably going to forget about in a week.
And this brilliantly illustrates a key insight from our source material. Generosity, when it reflects your values, adds a dimension to financial life that accumulation alone does not provide. It's not just some magic trick, right? Just blindly throwing cash around doesn't automatically dial up your happiness meter. It's all about alignment. When your financial tool perfectly matches your deepest beliefs, it unlocks this profound level of fulfillment that simply hoarding assets just cannot achieve.
So, that's the internal effect. But what happens when we start looking outward? This brings us to the external ripple. Let's run a quick thought experiment together to see how tiny individual actions can scale up to literally transform an entire community. Let's step into the village thought experiment. Picture a small, really tight-knit village made up of exactly 100 families. Now imagine that just one of those families is going through a completely devastating crisis. They've suddenly lost their income, maybe their kids are hungry, and they absolutely cannot pay their rent. They are entirely out of options and, frankly, extremely vulnerable. Okay, now imagine if each of the other 99 families in that village decides to step up and contribute just $5. $5. That is a remarkably small amount. I mean, it's roughly the cost of a fancy cup of coffee, right? To the individual family giving it, the financial sacrifice is practically non-existent. It barely even registers in their monthly budget.
But, and here's where it gets amazing, when that tiny individual contribution of $5 is combined with the other 99 families, the collective impact suddenly balloons to $495. For that one single family in crisis, that isn't just a nice, polite gesture. It is a literal safety net. It's an entire month of groceries. That collective action transforms a totally minor contribution into an actual life-saving intervention.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Let's scale this whole thing up. If just a few dollars from a few families can completely change the trajectory for one household, think about what $25 from thousands of people can do. We are talking about thousands of organizations serving millions of families all around the globe. It suddenly becomes the staggering, massive impact on a global level.
This is the exact mechanism by which the institutions we all rely on actually survive. Think about local food banks, community health clinics, scholarship funds, disaster relief organizations. These places run largely, and sometimes entirely, on voluntary donations. They depend totally on everyday people, just like us, deciding their mission is actually worth supporting. Your contribution is the literal fuel keeping these collective efforts running.
And this leads us to our final ripple. the infinite ripple. This is where giving transcends the immediate, day-to-day moment and starts touching on something way, way bigger. We're talking about legacy and core values. It's ultimately about what you leave behind and what you actively stand for while you are here.
C. Giving is arguably one of the most concrete, measurable expressions of what you actually value in this world. It is incredibly easy to say that you care about education or ending hunger or animal welfare or the arts. But when you actively direct your hard-earned financial resources to organizations doing the real, gritty work in those specific areas, you are physically manifesting those values. For a lot of people, this exact sense of purpose adds incredible, deep meaning to the daily grind of just earning a living.
So the crucial point is that legacy isn't some exclusive club just for billionaires. Accumulation is about building personal wealth, and hey, that is totally fine. But legacy is about permanent impact. Whether it's funding a scholarship in a parent's name, outfitting a room at a local hospital, or backing a conservation fund protecting land for future generations, you absolutely do not need massive wealth to leave a mark. Small, consistent giving creates a real story and a seriously lasting impact. Now, after seeing all these powerful ripples, you might be sitting there wondering, okay, so what are the actual rules here? How do I execute this? Well, the really comforting truth is that there is no single right answer. This explainer is definitely not here to dictate some rigid formula to you, because giving is fundamentally about intention.
The decision of how much, where, or even if you're going to give is shaped by deeply personal factors. Your unique values, your faith tradition, your current income, the specific life stage you're in, these are your personal variables. And it is completely, 100% fine if your giving profile looks entirely different from your neighbors down the street.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the ultimate practical takeaway it gives us. Make giving an intentional part of your financial plan. The goal here isn't to guilt you into some forced charity. No way. The goal is to provide you with a solid framework to think about giving proactively. That way, if and when you do decide to give, you aren't just reacting on the fly to an emotional plea. You are doing it purposefully, intentionally, and doing it well.
We've covered a whole lot today, but I really want to leave you right where we started, with your choices. Because whether you set up a formal donor-advised fund, commit to a traditional tithe, or just make one-off donations to cool community projects, the vehicle you use doesn't matter nearly as much as the true intention behind it. So think about this. If you were going to give $25 today, where would you want it to go? What kind of ripple effect do you want to start? Think about it and consider how you might put that tool to its most meaningful use.